About every 3 months, Yu-Gi-Oh players from around the world come together to share their opinions on what should get hit on the upcoming Forbidden and Limited list. Whether you're a highly competitive player or someone who just plays Yu-Gi-Oh for fun, everyone feels the need to express their opinions on what Konami's next business decision is. Along with that comes a weird conundrum. No one really knows what Konami has planned for us or what they believe is healthy or fair for the game. As much as we like to make these predictions, Konami almost always has a curveball to throw us for a loop. We believe the most problematic cards or decks of the format are bound to get hit, but that's not always the case. Almost everyone thought a card like True King of All Calamities was for sure going to get banned before Virtual World had a chance to ruin the format, but Konami didn't see a need for it to be banned yet. There's also been plenty of other cards that have survived the ban list longer than they should have. Firewall Dragon, Vanity's Emptiness, Elder Entity Norden, Soul Charge, and many more are all cards guilty of surviving way longer than they should have. A deck like Sky Strikers is a perfect example of a deck dominating the meta with countless YCS wins, but managed to completely dodge or receive a slap on the wrist on the Forbidden and Limited list multiple times. We've also had Dragon Link, a deck that has been in the game for years, 3 years if you count the evolution of the deck with Thunder Dragons back in 2019, and a card like LP survived the ban list all that time. On the other hand, there are times where a card no one expected to get hit ends up on the next Forbidden and Limited list. Some players are either left clueless or frustrated at how baffling the decision was and continues to question why the card was hit. KAISER COLOSSEUM was one of the most baffling hits on the Forbidden and Limited list, and until this day, people still don't have a definitive answer as to why this card was banned. At the time, KAISER COLOSSEUM wasn't even seeing much play and people weren't really complaining about the card. Another example of this was a card like UPSTART GOBLIN. While it was good as filler to see your important cards more, it wasn't really seen as a problem at the time. Modern FTK is why the card was eventually hit after being in the game for multiple years, and it was only collateral damage for the problem that was Life Equalizer and Magical Explosion. Looking into the future though, we could see why the limit and ban of both UPSTART GOBLIN and KAISER COLOSSEUM was justified. UPSTART GOBLIN would be an almost guaranteed staple in any combo deck as it would make those cards much easier to access. KAISER COLOSSEUM is a card that would restrict any and all combo decks from going off while also not affecting the user controlling it. That's not all though. There are times where the community is split on what should happen to a certain card. Maxi is commonly brought up in countless banlist discussions on whether it should come back in the game or not. Seeing that the card exists in the OCG, players use that to defend themselves on why the card should come back. Other players look at how warping of a card it is in the OCG and say that Maxi should stay banned. Players defending Maxi also say that the card punishes overextension and degenerate combos, but players against it look at the less powerful decks that lose to Maxi and say that the card is too oppressive. There's also been discussions on hitting decks that weren't necessarily the best deck of the format, but players in the community were tired of facing against. Invoked as an engine hasn't done much for the past 5 years since it's been legal, but people still cry for the deck to receive a hit. When you have a deck survive for such a long period of time, it prevents some people from exploring newer strategies. As much as people want a healthy format with decks of the same power level and consistency, people also want a fresh format with new deck types. On the contrary, players also always fall back to these strategies they played months or even years ago, which incentivizes Konami to bring back these older strategies. As much as we like to complain about these older decks, it's in Konami's best interest to bring back these older cards to please the community. Seeing that power creep exists in Yu-Gi-Oh, there's going to be times where a card gets outclassed before it would receive a hit on the ban list. SARYUJA Skull Dread was a card that sparked controversy due to the card being able to be used multiple times in a turn. Comparatively to a card like Heavy Metal Foes Electromite and TG Hyper Librarian, you could generate a lot of advantage off of these cards because their ability to be summoned multiple times in a turn. Cards that can be summoned and use their effects multiple times in a turn usually warrants a hit on the ban list. However, SARYUJA managed to dodge a ban list for so long to the point where another Link 4 has taken its spot as the best Link 4 turn 1. When Rising Rampage was released, Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess became the better Link for multiple reasons. The main reason was that Appaloosa was more rewarding to make and you didn't have to invest 4 monsters into it. Another reason, coincidentally enough, was that a month later, Nibiru the Primal Being would be released in the 2019 Megatins. Appaloosa being a monster negate meant that it would protect you from getting your board wiped by Nibiru. The existence of Nibiru meant that a card like Saryuja Skull Dread would be riskier to make than it was previously. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has always been a game of crazy power creep and wacky combos that no other card game has. As much as people might dislike the excessive talk of ban lists, they should realize how much of an impact it has on others' interest in the game. With that being said, the Forbidden and Limited list exists to spice things up and get players to test out newer and older cards so that the game stays compelling. Some ban lists are short and simple, some ban lists are long and crazy, others are dull and unpleasant, but most of all, they are unexpected and unpredictable.